An exclusive interview with the woman who heard a Sanford vigilante gun down a teenager on February 26th.
Sanford police have said George Zimmerman's claims of self-defense kept them from arresting him, and now 10 days later he's still free. That's fueling outrage around Central Florida and the nation.
New information coming out of Orlando this evening, in that case now generating outrage across this country.
Brewing nationwide outrage over the shooting death of an unarmed Florida teen shot and killed by a community watch member. After enormous public outcry, police released the 911 tapes this weekend. The tapes raising new questions about that tragic night and why the shooter has not been charged.
On the night of the shooting, February 26, 2012, police took Zimmerman into custody for questioning, but later let him go.
Your lead investigator, Chris Serino, suggested manslaughter on that initial police report. Why is it that, for 40-plus days, George Zimmerman walked a free man?
The laws of the state of Florida and the Constitution require you to have probable cause to arrest someone. The evidence and the testimony that we had didn't get us to probable cause.
The defendant, 28 years old, 5'7", 204 pounds, and armed. Now let me stop right here. He had the right to bear arms. We live in this great country, and the Second Amendment allows people to carry a firearm. And he had a permit. He had a right to have a concealed permit, to have a concealed firearm. So again, he is not violating any law. The victim in this case, 17 years old, 5'11", 158 pounds. And he was unarmed. Well, I guess if you would consider Skittles or the tea or what, I'm not trying to make light of it, but the defense is saying, oh, it's that concrete, and we'll talk about the concrete. But what started this? Assumptions. Incorrect assumptions on the part of one individual. And again, that's the last photograph we have of Trayvon Martin. This innocent 17-year-old kid was profiled as a criminal. To quote the defendant, and pardon my language, he was one of those assholes that get away. Pardon my language. He was one of those fucking punks. Now, the defendant, Mr. Zimmer, didn't scream that out, and so the defense will argue, well, that shows that he didn't have any ill will or hatred. No, I would submit to you that he uttered it under his breath. And that itself indicates ill will and hatred. Because he was speaking to the 911 or non-emergency person. But what he was doing is he was verbalizing what he was thinking. And that's why that's important. Because in his mind, he already assumed certain things. That Trayvon Martin was a fucking punk, and he was an asshole, and he wasn't going to get away this time. You recall the prior calls? We brought in 5, I think defense put in another one, 6 within the last 5-6 months, where crimes have been committed in the neighborhood. He was sick and tired of it. But the law doesn't say, okay, take the law into your own hands. Oh, I'm sorry, I got the wrong guy. Oh, I'm so sorry, I thought he was a criminal. Mr. Martin, Tracy Martin, Sabrina Fulton, I am so sorry, I made a mistake. I didn't realize that Trayvon Martin was minding his own business. I am terribly sorry. The law doesn't say that. The law talks about accountability and responsibility for one's actions. And that's what we're asking for in this case. Hold the defendant responsible for his actions. Hold him accountable for what he did. Because if the defendant hadn't assumed that, Trayvon Martin would have watched the basketball game. George Zimmerman, I'm assuming, would have gone to Target and did whatever he does on Sunday evenings, and we wouldn't be here.
Police Department. Line's being recorded to Sean.
Hey, we've had some break-ins in my neighborhood, and there's a real suspicious guy. This guy looks like he's up to no good, or he's on drugs or something.
Okay, and this guy, is he white, black, or Hispanic?
He looks black.
Did you see what he was wearing?
Yeah, a dark hoodie, like a gray hoodie, and either jeans or sweatpants and white tennis shoes.
He said a man was following him, and I told him he should run.
He's here now. He was just staring.
Okay.
And now he's just staring at me. Something's wrong with him. Yeah. He's coming to check me out.
He said, I'm not gonna run. I'm just gonna put my hoodie on and walk faster.
He's got something in his hands. I don't know what his deal is. These assholes, they always get away. Shit, he's running.
He's running? Which way is he running?
Down towards the other entrance of the neighborhood.
Okay. Which entrance is that he's heading towards?
The back entrance.
Are you following him?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't need you to do that.
Investigating this as a possible hate crime.
Young Trayvon, only 17, barely even started living, same age as me. Your life has been the alarm to our people waking a dream, making us all aware that not everybody is free, not everybody is equal, not everybody can see that we live in a world where racism dominates the scene. We dream and hope for the best, so our motto is ignorance. The truth is too hard to swallow, so lack of knowledge is bliss. Thank you for being born, you lived for us to see that even with our successes, our people were never free. Moved from plantations, enslaving us mentally, but now we finally see it, and that was your legacy. I never thought that a hoodie could be the cost of a life, but living is never nothing if dying shall only fight. I turn to look at the stars in the sky, knowing another brother lost, there's an angel about to fly.
Let the prosecution and the defense, plead their case. I have my own opinions about everything. I say like the stand your ground rule. I have a problem with it, because if you can manufacture something, and I'm not talking about the case now, but if I could come up to you and manufacture a situation, and then be able to get away with it, I think that rule or that law it needs to be addressed, because that could be to anybody. That could be your mom, that could be your father, that could be your kids, cousins, friends, anybody. I think that's just, that's a slippery slope for people to have that type of power and to actually be able to annihilate someone and go home and go to sleep. That's not how I think the system should work.
But also a 7-year-old Florida law called Stand Your Ground, giving enormous leeway to people like Zimmerman to use deadly force if they feel threatened. Since the law, justified homicides in Florida have jumped threefold. 20 other states have similar laws, but Florida's is seen as the most extreme. The courts here challenged by some of these cases, including one in which a man was shot dead after a playground argument over a skateboarder. The author of Florida's law now says it's being misused.
This gentleman is on very thin ice claiming this is a defense when he's actively out there pursuing and confronting another individual.
The law, he says, was meant to protect law-abiding citizens, not vigilantes. Matt Gutman, ABC News, Sanford, Florida.
Another angry white man in Florida has stood his ground in the face of an imagined threat. And another black 17-year-old high school junior who did nothing wrong is dead. I first heard this story on Monday morning on my flight back to New York after the Thanksgiving holiday. The flight attendant who told me about it, a faithful viewer of this program, will be attending Jordan Davis's funeral and burial on Saturday. Last Friday, the day after Jordan Davis led his family's Thanksgiving prayer for the first time in his young life, he was sitting in the back seat of his friend's car parked outside a convenience store in Jacksonville, Florida, while another friend was in the store buying gum and soda. The kids had the music in their parked car jacked up pretty loud, and that is why Jordan Davis is being buried this weekend. Parked beside them was 45-year-old Michael Dunn, who had just come from his son's wedding, where he admits to having had only a couple of drinks. It's safe to say this guy and Jordan Davis had different tastes in music. Michael Dunn decided he had the authority to tell the kids to turn down the volume. The kids did what most kids would do, and what I certainly would have done under the circumstances: nothing. They didn't turn down the volume for the suddenly self-appointed volume cop of Jacksonville, Florida. So Michael Dunn, who was waiting, I think we can say impatiently, for his girlfriend to return to the car with some more wine, took out his handgun and started shooting. He fired 8 bullets at the 4 kids in the car. Like most amateur cops, he completely missed his target with 6 of those bullets. The other 2 hit Jordan, who was sitting in the middle of the back seat. Michael Dunn didn't behave in a very cop-like way after that. He immediately fled the scene. The kids quickly piled out of their car, realizing they weren't injured, and looked back to see Jordan slumped alone in the back seat. A witness got Michael Dunn's plate number and gave it to police, who tracked him down 173 miles away from the shooting the next day and arrested him. Yesterday, he was formally charged with murder in the 2nd degree of Jordan Davis and the attempted murder of the other kids in the car. His lawyer told reporters yesterday that she is considering using Florida's stand your ground law as a defense. And of course, his lawyer knows that the law doesn't say you can stand your ground against loud music and shoot and kill kids who refuse to turn down the volume.
Well, yeah, I definitely want to ask this attorney about the whole stand your ground issue. Obviously, that's a very controversial law, and we have the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman case, and she's saying that my client is not a vigilante. Nevertheless, I reserve the right to use the stand your ground defense. So on what basis? He reportedly, allegedly said, guys, turn your music down. Now, this is a gas station. This isn't somebody who's asleep in his private home who needs to get that 8 hours to keep his job. This is somebody at a gas station waiting for his girlfriend to buy some wine and come out. Why was it so important for him to insist that these young men turn their music down?
A lot of questions. Can't wait to see you get some of those answers tonight, James.